was a little girl that asked her mother this question: "Mommy, where do people come from?" And her mother answered, "Well, God made Adam and Eve, and they had children, and that's how humankind was made." So a couple days later, she asked her father the same question. The father answered, "Well, many years ago, there were monkeys, and human beings evolved from those monkeys." And so the confused little girl returned to her mother and said, "Mommy, how is it possible that you told me that we were created by God, and Daddy said we came from monkeys?" And the mother answered, "Well, dear, it's very simple. I told you about my side of the family, and your father told you about his." I thought, I could have saved that for Mother's Day. That's good. So, today we are continuing with our 5-week series on metaphysical masters, women, the women that I really truly have grown up in unity and New Thought with, that I really feel are just masters at the practical application of these principles that we call New Thought, metaphysics. And so today is another one of my favorites, and her name is Imelda Octavia Shanklin. I mean, just the word, her name, Imelda Octavia Shanklin. And I'd like to just tell you a little bit about her background as we get started in exploring her teachings this morning. Imelda Octavia Shanklin was one of Unity's earliest leaders. She was born in 1865 in a small town in Iowa to a Methodist family that was more than likely influenced by the Quakers who were prominent in that area. Before she came to Unity, she was a school teacher who in her spare time wrote about history and politics. In 1909, she began working at Silent Unity. She was one of 4 people who worked at Unity School of Christianity at the time. And in 1916, she was ordained as a Unity minister by Unity's co-founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. Unity co-founder Myrtle Fillmore chose her to be the editor of We Wisdom, which was the oldest magazine for children in the country. And by 1925, Reverend Imelda was named editor-in-chief of all Unity publications, and she wrote for them all, and that included Unity Magazine, Weekly Unity, Good Business, and We Wisdom. In 1830, she resigned from this position and moved back to Iowa to write. In addition to What Are You, which is where I'm taking this morning's message, which is my favorite book, one of them, Imelda Shanklin wrote 5 other books, which are all out of print. She made her transition in 1953. She was really known for her direct writing style that just seemed to capture the depth and power of New Thought spiritual principles. And in her writings, she always recognized the source of infinite wisdom that was her inspiration and guide. She always did. All right. So what are you? So if someone walked up to you today on the street and said, "Carol, what are you?" "Ann, what are you?" Yeah, what would you say? I don't want to put you guys on the spot. But, a typical response in our culture might be, "Well, I am an engineer," or, whatever we do, whatever we work, or "I'm a Christian," or "I'm an American." So the opportunity is just to look within and just ask yourself, what would you say if someone came up to you and asked you that question? Because, and I know that I've talked about this before, but I think it's always a good reminder. It's kind of basic metaphysics, but it's profound, I think, metaphysics, this distinction. So We're making distinctions between the who of us and the what of us. So if we were to answer that question by saying it's a role that we play or a job that we do or a declaration of what country that we're from or what religion we're a part of, that is what Imelda would say, that's the who of us. The who of us is our personality self. It's the personal of us, what we make personal. And so as we know, and I would imagine that most of us that are sitting in this room have probably, more than likely, come from another spiritual tradition. And so if you think back to when you were a teenager. Do you think that you were a little different than, your personality might be a little bit different? Your values are a little bit different. What you do, how you approach life. So Imelda's point is, the who of us is that which changes. It's our consciousness. It's what we believe. It's how we do things in relation to the external world. And I call that when we're giving power to our personality, to our personal choices, that's when we're giving power to the external world, which I call the relative world, the little r reality. Okay, so her whole thing is she thinks it's possible for us to transform our who into our what and to live from that. Because the what of us is that which is unchanging. And I always like to make this disclaimer, just because it's unchanging doesn't mean it's static. It's infinite. It's what we call our God self, and I always like to say, be careful with that a little bit, because there's only one self, capital S self, and that's you. All right? And so the what of us is our wholeness, is our infinite love. It's our divinity. Some people call it our Christ consciousness. It's what we are. It's the what of us. So the opportunity that we have when somebody walks up on, somebody's going to do that. What are you? It's not a very common question in our culture, but because we planted that seed, it just might happen. You're walking down the street now and somebody says, what are you? Given the distinction between the who and the what would you say now? I'll just give you a couple ideas. You could say, I am amazing. I am whole. I am worthy. I am beautiful. I am way more than enough. Yeah, you can get the idea. And so the opportunity that we have is the work that's ours to do, according to Imelda, is to work on shifting our focus from the who of us, from living from that, to the what of us. And we're not making anything wrong. Our personality is wonderful. Every single one of you has a personality, and it's wonderful. The humanness of us is really beautiful. It's just that I know for myself that, boy, when that who takes over, sometimes it's really not pretty. And so the opportunity, again, that we have is to shift our focus, to live from our whatness, to ground our personality in the truth of what we are. And that is described as poise. Now, that is a word that I don't hear too often and used. It's kind of an older word. But in a lot of New Thought writings, I hear this word, poise. And I love that word. Because Imelda talks about when we are poised, it's just the word poised. It's like we stand taller. We're rooted in our knowing of the truth of what we are. We stand poised. And when we're poised, when we feel like something's coming at us and we're rooted, we can move, we can sway. It doesn't take us over, you see. So she encourages us to strengthen our poise in knowing the truth of what we are. And I found a story that I think describes that. It's a pretty extreme example, but I think it speaks to what poise really is. When we stand and we are clear about what is true. There was a time of civil war in Korea when a certain general led his troops through province after province, overrunning whatever stood in his path. And the people of one town, knowing that he was coming, and having heard tales of his cruelty, all fled into the mountains. And the general arrived in the empty town with his troops and sent them out to search the town. And some of the soldiers came back and reported that only one person remained, a Zen priest. And the general strode over to the temple, walked in, pulled out his sword, and said, "Don't you know who I am? I am the one who can run through you without batting an eye." And the Zen master looked back and calmly responded, "And I, sir, am one who can be run through without batting an eye." The general, hearing this, bowed and left. That's poise. So let's look at that story. What is the general that sweeps over your town where you inwardly live that generates fear? What is it that we are giving power to outside of us instead of staying poised in our knowing of what we are? Where are we fearful? Where are we doubtful? Where are we seeing lack instead of abundance? So this is the opportunity that Imelda talks about. And in those moments when we're seeing outside of the truth of what we are, to shift our focus on what's true. It's a little simple technique, but it is easier said than done sometimes, right? And I know for myself that I am best able to shift my focus when I take time in my day to be still, to meditate, to spend time in nature. And you know what nurtures your soul. But I do think that when we can give ourselves the gift of a practice in our daily life, that we can more readily in the moment of life, when we feel life is coming at us, to be able to shift our focus to what's true and to stand poised like the Zen priest in the midst of whatever's happening and not bat an eye. Because we're so clear about what we are. That's the opportunity, and I think that's our great work. Because, folks, the thing is, what you are, regardless of whether you believe it or not, is in place. It is the truth of what you are. You are whole, and you are beautiful, and you are capable, and you are valuable, and you are amazing. Period. So there. So that's some of your answers to answer the question, what are you? So this week, I just invite you to spend some time in a practice where if you're in the midst of something, and you know, we're in life, folks, and I know that we can just watch the news. I know I can watch the news for 30 seconds and need to go into the stillness. Okay? So in life, you know, if you find yourself losing your center, when you find yourself losing your poise, take a deep breath and to ask yourself, what am I? What am I? And to spend time each morning. And I really believe at the beginning of the day is the time, it's like Jim said in his song, to center ourselves in the truth of what we are so that we can be more readily poised as we go out in life. So this week, let's take that on together. Let's take it on together. Let's practice shifting our focus, practice being in our practice of stillness. And if you don't have one, you might want to get one and discover for yourself what centers you in your inner poise. And just notice how life tends to flow more easily and gently with more joy. Okay, take a deep breath with me. All right, so let's affirm the truth together. I am poised in my knowing of what I am, and my life flows with ease and joy.